Hi there, I'm Elizabeth Ritchie from Rambana and Ritchie Immigration Attorneys in Tallahassee. As you can see, I'm physically in my office. We are open. My partner, Neil Rambana, and our staff are all here. We are seeing clients, though, by Skype and Zoom, and of course, by phone. So I wanted to talk today about some marriage-based adjustment of status tips. The November visa bulletin is out finally, and F2A is current. So regardless of whether you are in a marriage with a citizen or permanent resident, what I'm about to tell you applies. First, I want to talk about who can file for adjustment in the U.S. And when I say adjustment, I'm talking about a full one-step adjustment, including the I-485. And that's for somebody who entered legally, okay, and who is legally married. So I want to stress legally married. So often someone will say that they're married and they're in what's known as an union libre or common law marriage, or they say, oh, I'm married, but in my home country. If you're married in your home country and that marriage is a legal marriage there, that marriage is a legal marriage here. For example, if I, who am married, go on a vacation to another country, I'm still married. So married in another country is going to mean married here. You have to be legally married. In other words, you can't be married to multiple people at the same time. Those marriages are void. You need to show all of the forms at the initial filing, or you could risk rejection. And when I say all of the forms, I'm talking about the I-130, the I-485, the I-765, for which there is no fee when you file the 485. Even if you're not planning on working, I suggest doing that 765. It will result in a Social Security number. Even if you're not planning on traveling, I encourage you to do an I-131 just in case you have a travel emergency. If a form has questions that the answers don't apply or there are no answers, try to do the right words, not applicable or none, because immigration has been rejecting cases generally for people who are not represented and who are filing either U's, R's, or for asylum. So to prevent that, go ahead and write not applicable, NA, or even none. Make sure to include your marriage certificate, termination of your prior marriages of either of you, if any, your I-94. If you entered a long time ago, you may not be able to download your I-94 from CBP. So you'll send a copy of your paper I-94 front and back. If you entered since the electronic program started, you're going to go ahead and go to CBP's webpage and download your I-94 and approve it. I want to include some evidence. Most of the evidence I like to submit at the interview, but go ahead and include some evidence. One tip I had from an immigration officer about 20 years ago was to include a photo of the couple holding a recent newspaper where it was visible the date and the headline. Not only do you include the paper, the actual newspaper, at least that's front page, but the photo, and it shows that the couple was together recently. I like to make sure that clients also include a perjury statement separate and apart from any perjury statements that's included in the forms. It shows the adjudicating officer that you know what you're getting into and that you know the ramifications of lying. I want to talk to you about the medical exam now. So immigration has been going through a lot of changes recently. The medical exam results are valid for 2 years. So you could submit the medical later. In other words, after you file. On the other hand, immigration is really looking for any reason to delay or deny a case. So they could also reject you if you didn't include the medical with the initial filing. So that's going to be your choice. I like to include it at the beginning just to prevent any problems. Another suggestion, clean up your social media. If you have pictures that are inappropriate or not complimentary, go ahead and take those off. If your status says that you are single or does not have any status, I would suggest updating that to say that you are married. So once you file, you're going to get receipts from immigration, and those receipts will have a receipt number for each individual form that I mentioned earlier. You'll be able to check the status of your case at USCIS.gov. There is a section for checking case status under the case management part. You're not going to hear anything anytime real soon. The first thing that you'll hear is about your biometrics, your fingerprints. Immigration is trying to keep people out of the office if at all possible. So if you have done fingerprints in the past, it is possible that immigration will not make you come in and have them done again. And that's only for the alien, by the way, not the citizen or resident petitioner. I do want to back up real quickly and mention for the permanent resident spouses, they may file because the priority date is current, but that spouse of a permanent resident, in order to do so, does need to be in status. So that's a good point of clarification. So you're going to get those receipts, maybe go and do the biometrics. If you're told to do so, then you're going to have an interview. And when that interview happens, it's going to depend on where you live and how long your local office takes. You can also go to USCIS.gov and check the processing times on that same section and see how long cases are taking in your area. Next, the point of the interview. It's to determine, did you enter into the country legally? Did you enter into the marriage in good faith? In other words, not just for the green card. Do you have any serious criminal history that would preclude you from getting a green card? By the way, if you do have criminal history, I suggest bringing with you original records of either the disposition or the arrest record, whatever you have, to show the officer, and whether you have a communicable disease, and that's the point of that medical. So, what's going to happen at the interview? First, you're going to bring your interview notice that you get in the mail. You're going to bring a government-issued valid ID, in other words, a non-expired ID. Right now, during the pandemic, you have to bring a mask, and you have to bring your own pen. The interview may take place in the lobby. And by the way, you cannot arrive more than 15 minutes before your start time. Next, no small talk. The officer, even before the COVID, was not going to shake your hand. They're certainly not going to do so now. There will be some plexiglass between you and the officer if the interview is taking place in an office. So less is more. If it is a yes or no question that you're being asked, I suggest a yes or no answer, unless, of course, an elaboration would help. You and your spouse may be separated. In other words, the interviewer may keep one of you in their office and the other waits outside, and then you switch. And the point of that is to make sure you answer the question the same way. So be very careful. If you stay in a hotel the night before your interview, I recommend that you make sure both of you know the name of that hotel. If you rented a car and drove to the interview, make sure you both know the make, model, and color of that car, and that you remember who drove. If you took turns driving and you're asked who drove to the interview, make sure to mention that you took turns. Next, I want you to bring additional evidence, such as photos of yourselves together over time, a snapshot before you were married, the wedding, recent holidays and events. Bring photos of all of those things with you. Immigration will not look at a jump drive. They will not look at your phone unless they are looking for other evidence that you're not going to be able to volunteer it. They're not going to look at a DVD or your laptop or anything like that. They'll need to be printed out photos. All of that evidence, including finances and things like that, you're going to keep on your own lap. You're not going to go ahead and put it on the officer's desk unless they invite you to do so. You are not going to put your wallet on the officer's desk while you're going through your things. You can keep all of that type of thing on your lap. Attorneys may appear in person, and because of COVID, they also may appear by phone. Interpreters, however, may only appear by phone. However, immigration does not have the capacity to do a three-way call. So what they are doing is they are calling the attorney, telling them that they are ready for the interview, and then the attorney has to get the interpreter on the line. There is a lot of confusion among officers about how to go about that process. I strongly suggest you find out your local office's procedure. Some of them are requesting a fax in advance with a UG28 and instructions about what number to call, but they are often not checking the fax. You may want to have your client, or if you're going unrepresented, bring proof that you did in fact fax immigration, and show the officer when you arrive that you want an attorney present or an interpreter present on the phone. If you didn't have an attorney represent you all along, that's okay. You can still have an interview take place with an attorney, and the attorney would just be responsible for that particular interview. That's possible as well. So you want to go ahead and make sure you check your local office's procedure. If at the time of the interview you're not married for 2 full years yet, that alien spouse is going to get conditional permanent residency. In other words, immigration is going to put a condition on residency to make sure the marriage stays in place for 2 years going forward. The 2 years, or however much time you've already been married, won't count toward that residency period. 90 days or less before that second residency anniversary, not the wedding anniversary, you can file to remove the condition on that residency. You're still a permanent resident in the meantime. You still have all the rights and privileges of residency, including the ability to travel abroad. But you do have to petition to remove that condition in the future. If you're still married and living together, you'll do that Form I-751 together. If you're not, either due to death or divorce, then the alien spouse will file that 751 as what's called a waiver. If you have already been married for 2 years, you're going to get a 10-year green card and there's no condition. If you are a permanent resident for 3 years and still married and living with your spouse, you can file for citizenship, actually up to 90 days before the third residency anniversary. By the way, irrespective of whether the condition has been removed. So if you're not married and living with the petitioner, then you have to wait 5 years, but otherwise it's 3 years. So those are some tips. I'm going to highlight my favorites, which are that newspaper photo, the evidence of knowledge of the possibility of perjury, and of course, evidence of the interview. Less is more. In other words, the yes or no question, answer yes or no, and only elaborate if it's helpful to do so. No small talk. Those are my tips for marriage-based adjustment interviews. Good luck to you.